Hey everyone, back to you into today's second video. I've already done the July month-ahead forecast. You can find that on the month-ahead forecast page. You can get to that via the buttons underneath the weather video here on the home page. Just carry on scrolling down the home page and eventually you'll see the button that takes you to the July month-ahead forecast. This video is going to focus on the next 8 to 10 days. And it does look as though weather's going to be a little bit changeable as we go through next week. I think southern areas probably having a lot of dry weather through the week, but the north would have some showers at times. I don't think we'll go back to the kind of heat that we had yesterday. It was a very, very hot day yesterday. We'll have a look at the detail on that in a second. But I don't think we'll go back to that kind of heat, but it will be warm at times down in the south, I think, through the course next week, because the Azores are going to remain relatively close to northern parts of France. Well, before I get on with that, just to say about the ads, there's links to articles on all the pages at gasvisitors.com. Have a browse through widgets. Any articles that you're interested in, please click through the article for read the article, and thanks very much for doing that. There's video ads on most of the pages. They open out within the content. When you watch them, they'll close back up again. It's all helpful to pay for the website. And thanks for getting involved in doing that. So we'll just start off with the central England temperature from yesterday, because it was a supremely hot day. Provincially, the July central England temperature just for the first, we've only got 1 day's worth of data, of course. So just for the first, we're standing at 24.5 degrees for the central England temperature for July, and that's an anomaly of 8.8 degrees above average. Astonishingly high central England temperature. Not the record, but it is a very, very high. It's within the top 10 highest sort of daily central England temperature returns on record, an anomaly of around 9 degrees above the long-term average. It was a really, really hot day, and unsurprisingly, if we was to keep that sort of heat going through the rest of the month, it would easily be the hottest July on record. We're not going to keep that sort of heat going. Even today, I think we'll see a fairly significant drop from that point, because it's a cooler, more overcast day today, but certainly a stonkingly hot day yesterday. The all-time July central England temperature for a month was in July 2006. It's this one just here that I've highlighted. Blue, it comes out at 19.7. That's the hottest month within the central England temperature index, going back to 1659. And what's that? That's about 5 degrees lower than yesterday's central England temperature. So, yeah, it was such a hot day yesterday. But if you don't like the heat, thankfully, has turned a bit cooler today. Heat will probably reload tomorrow, but that could lead to some thunderstorms. If I have time, I'm not sure if I will, David. If I have time, I'll have a look at Stormwatch this evening, looking at the risk of some thunderstorms for tomorrow evening down in the south. There's not all that much in way of thunder for today, by the way, so things aren't blowing up, well, aren't yet blowing up for today. Right, let's have a look at the next 8 to 10 days from the 500 meter heights. We've got the E70UF here on the left, and the GFS is over on the right of the screen as you're looking at it. 500 millibars, 8,000 feet is the area in the atmosphere, high pressure, low pressure being moved around by the jet stream running above. And of course, blue extrapolates to low pressure, orange, red extrapolates high pressure. This will take us up to around the 12th of July. What we've got here is a ridge out through the central part of the Atlantic, and a trough sitting up across the northeast of the country over Scandinavia. So the jet stream is actually coming down through the country. It is moving into the UK a little bit more on that one. So that is turning things more unsettled. Not desperately a washout by any means, but because the jet stream is just moving down closer to us, it is more unsettled, and it is a little bit cooler as well. We have got quite a bit of ridging to the south of us, though. So that's what I'm saying about southern parts of the country probably being warm at times, because that Azores high is still ridging through most of western and Central Europe. So the heat won't be far away, and at times I think we will bring warmer conditions up into the south. But GFS isn't as deep with that trough up to the northeast over Scandinavia, and consequently the ridge is actually stronger down to the south. So that I think the GFS implies a greater chance of bringing warmer conditions at times into the south, although the jet stream is still more or less coming through the country like that. So I don't think it'll be as hot or as settled as it has been through the course of next week, but nevertheless, southern parts of the country will get some very pleasant weather at times next week, I would think, with some pretty good sunny spells and some warmth at times, not reaching the extreme heat that we had yesterday, where we had a new central temperature, of course, at Heathrow Airport for July. We won't reach that sort of heat next week, famous last words, but I don't think we will. But it will still be warm at times down in the south. So the GFS temperature and precipitation ensembles look like this. The temperatures are on a bit of a downward trend for today. The red line here is the 30-year temperature average. You can see we're still starting off really very warm. That's left over from yesterday, but things will be cooling down just for a brief period later today and overnight time. So it'll be a much fresher night tonight. If you had trouble sleeping last night, you will find it easier to get to sleep tonight. But then we get a bit of a reload of heat tomorrow. Do get another push up in the temperatures tomorrow. So that could lift temperatures back over 30 degrees down in the southeast, 86 Fahrenheit. But this one is only brief, and it could be associated with some thunderstorms. And then as we go into weekend, we see the temperatures dropping down, and then there's no real sign actually that we go back to these sort of levels of heat, but we have been temperatures are well scattered here as we go through next week and into the second half of the ensemble through this period here. But there's no definitive sign that we're going to turn it very hot again. And probably just hovering around the 30-year average. And at this time of year, upper air temperatures around 30-year average will probably deliver us above average temperatures by day. So it'll probably still be warm, with temperatures getting into the mid-20s Celsius down in the south, but not the extreme levels of heat that we had yesterday. That lift up in the temperatures tomorrow is associated with some precipitation spikes just here. So I say there is a risk of bringing thunderstorms up into the south tomorrow evening, and then spreading them north across England and Wales tomorrow night, and possibly through into Saturday morning. I'll have a look at that on Stormwatch later if I get the time. Beyond that, we could bring some precipitation through at the start of next week, but overall, not a great deal of rainfall, you have to say there. It looks like the fairly dry trend that we've had through 2015 so far is going to continue for the foreseeable future. Certainly down in the south, probably more in way of showing rain at times up in the north and the west. But down in the south, I think the fairly dry trend that we have through the year is likely to continue. I've gone for a drier than average July in the month ahead forecast. The temperature anomaly from the 2nd through to the 10th of July is coming out a little bit warmer than average. We've lost the extreme deep reds that we had on these charts a day or two ago. They've pushed off into central and eastern parts of Europe and down across France, Spain, Portugal. But it is still a little bit above average, so that just backs up what I was saying, that whilst I don't think next week we'll go back to the kind of heat that we had yesterday, still probably a relatively warm week coming up, especially down in the south. The precipitation anomaly looks a little bit drier than average in the south and the southeast, a little bit wetter than average in the north and the northwest. So again, that just implies, and it tells us that the jet stream is coming further down into the country over the coming week. So here's the generic chart, and here we have Monday's chart. This is 96 hours away, and it's sort of the setup that I was describing in the 500 millibar height anomaly, really. This is the GFS bar. We've got the low pressure up to the northwest of Scotland, the ridge down across northern parts of France, just coming into southern parts of England, keeping the south mainly dry, whereas the north will be at risk of some showers. As we go through next week, this is Tuesday, we may bring some showery rain down across the south through the middle part of the week, and fairly cool air perhaps pushing through Tuesday into Wednesday. If you follow the isobars back, the air is actually originating somewhere from Iceland, so that could be significantly cooler actually just for a day or two through the middle part of next week. But then the Azores high look comes back into towards France, starts to drag the air down into a more tropical point of the Atlantic again, so that will lift temperatures up, not to the levels of heat that we had yesterday, but probably going back above average down in the south, still a little bit cool and unsettled up in the north. And that's how we go into the end of next week. This is Friday the 10th of July. Again, north-south split, the north like to have some rain, cooler temperatures, the south close to the Azores high across France likely to be dry and fairly warm, very pleasant. By day 10, we go through to Saturday the 12th of July. And again, could be bringing something down from the northwest, possibly bringing some showers into the northwest, but the south and east still likely to be mainly dry and quite warm. Have a look at the ECMWF, and again, very similar conditions for the start of next week. Low pressure down to the northwest, so more settled there. The ridge is close to the south, so the most settled conditions will be in the south and the southeast. Through next week, we find this low pressure coming through the north of the country. And again, fairly cool air coming around this area of low pressure, perhaps even turning a little bit cooler than average down in the south briefly around the middle part of next week. Now, remember from the height anomaly chart, the ECM does not reach that high as much to the south of the country, so it could be a little bit more unsettled on this sort of setup, even down in the south. And by the end of next week, this is Friday the 10th of July, where the GFS was ridging the Azores high in across France, actually the ECMWF is still placing us in this sort of cool north to northwesterly flow. So I do think between the two, the ECM is probably the coolest and most unsettled for next week, whereas the GFS, at least for the south, looks relatively dry. Little blip around Tuesday, Wednesday, but relatively dry for the south on the GFS, and a little bit warmer as well down in the south. By the time we go through to day 10, which is Sunday the 12th of July, again it's a similar scenario with that high pressure still out to the west, bringing down these relatively cool west to northwesterly winds. The south gets the driest weather, but it isn't as dry or as warm as the GFS. So I've got a little bit of a split there actually between the ECM and the GFS. Not quite as straightforward as it appeared on the height anomaly chart. The ECM is definitely a cooler, more unsettled pattern for next week, whereas the GFS, it does bring a little bit of cool weather down around middle of the week, but overall it's quite warm for the south and a lot of dry weather away from northern parts of the country as well. So you're going to have to wait and see on that. It's just very subtle differences, but quite big differences. It's really just with the placement of that high pressure from the Azores. If it gets in towards France, it's going to keep the south main dry, but if it sticks just out to the west, as we had it through most of June, then it implies a cooler pattern. We'll wait and see on that one. But overall, I don't think we're going back to the extreme heat that we had yesterday. So that's the good news if you don't like very hot weather. I don't think we'll be seeing temperatures getting on for 100 Fahrenheit in the foreseeable future anyway, over the next week to 10 days. And the north looks fairly unsettled next week. The south probably driest. But just how things play out next week, a little bit uncertain. It'll be JMA Friday tomorrow when we'll have a look at the situation for the coming month. I think that one takes us into the start of August. And if I've got time this evening, I'll update Stormwatch with the risk, no more than that, but a risk of thunderstorms down in the south later on tomorrow. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.